Welcome to another edition of the Hawk Off the Press podcast. I'm your host, Gazette Hawkeyes reporter John Steppe. I'm excited to welcome back Matt Wenzel, who covers Michigan State for MLive. Matt, thanks for joining me.
No problem, John.
So another week, another Michigan State night game. It seems to be the trend over there.
Yeah, not ideal. So this will be the fourth straight night game for Michigan State, fifth overall this year. Next week at Michigan, night game, so that'll be number 6, and then they host Purdue on Friday, November 22nd, and that's a night game. So they will play 7 night games this season, which is a program record. I spoke with athletic director Alan Haller yesterday about it, and part of it is, so he requested the season opener be moved from a Saturday up to a Friday night, and that's become pretty much standard Labor Day weekend tradition at Michigan State in the last 15 or so years. And then they played it at Boston College. That was basically considered an ACC game. They moved it tonight, and so now they're pretty much maxed out. Alan is not thrilled with the way this has worked out and says it's not ideal. But that's just part of the nature of when the colleges give over control to the TV networks. That's just part of what happens. But so yeah, not an ideal situation for Michigan State, but none of the players and coaches are complaining. So just going to be another late night for everyone.
Us included.
Yes. Welcome to East Lansing, and for the this will be the third night game at home this year, I believe. So yeah, Florida Atlantic, Ohio State, and now Iowa. So should be interesting.
Well, start time aside, kind of what's the scouting report for Aiden Childs, and kind of what has he brought to this Michigan State offense?
Dynamic quarterback. The last, you guys saw Michigan State last year, and that was Noah Kim. He is now the backup at Coastal Carolina. Caden Hauser, who began the season, or who took over for Kim after the loss at Iowa. He is the backup at East Carolina. The number 3 on the depth chart last year was true freshman Sam Levitt. He's the only one who won the starting job after transferring out, and he's at Arizona State. So a lot to unpack on what Michigan State thought of its quarterback situation last year after running off a 2-year starter in Peyton Thorne. But anyways, all that aside, Aiden Childs is they haven't had a quarterback like him in a long time. Really athletic. He's big. He's got a huge arm. He can beat you with his legs. He makes some NFL level throws, and he'll escape pressure in ways that you didn't see coming. His problem is he has not been able to take care of the ball. His 8 interceptions. I think only 4 quarterbacks in the country have more, and it's just been. And he's got some 2 red zone fumbles. It's just been back-breaking turnovers. I mean, if you go to the Boston College game, they had deep shots early, and he missed overthrowing Montorie Foster, and he threw 3 interceptions in the game. And the last was, they're driving down with a chance to take the lead, and he forces the ball in the double coverage in the end zone with time on the clock. And you just can't do that. The next week, Ohio State, they go 1 for 4 in the red zone in the first half. Should have been leading the game at halftime. Instead, you're already down double digits, and you're not going to win doing that. And then Oregon last week, the defense is getting some stops, or they picked off Gabriel in the end zone. They picked him off at the 1-yard line, and they just can't get out of their own way. Michigan State has a chance to put the ball in the end zone early, and Childs fumbles at the 1 on the first possession of the game, and then they just get stomped. So, long story short is I think Aiden Childs has the potential to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He just needs to clean everything up and get some more help around him. They don't really have much. The run game is not nowhere near as effective as they want it to be. And they've, the offensive line has just been kind of a makeshift unit, because of injuries. So, long story short, yeah, a lot of potential in Aiden Childs, but he's still 19 years old and 6 starts into his college career.
Are there any kind of examples that Iowa can look back to in terms of, okay, such and such team did a really good job of keeping Childs uncomfortable and kind of making those mistakes a little more prone?
Yeah, Oregon. Michigan State got dominated up front that game. Giles was under pressure all night long. He didn't he didn't have an interception. He had that early fumble, but yeah, I mean, if you can get to him, obviously that's going to make life difficult. He's a lot of the throws. His interceptions have been mostly, I think, on him. It's just trying to put the ball in a spot where you shouldn't, poor decision, or just being off target. So I would say Oregon did the best job of making it difficult on him.
And then with the running back position, Iowa fans have some familiarity with Nate Carter, one of the
Mm-hmm.
few running backs last year to reach the 100-yard mark against the
Mm-hmm.
Hawkeyes. Seems like he's not the only option though now that they seem to be going to at that position.
Yeah. So Carter was the only scholarship back who stuck with the program through the coaching change. They added K'Ron Lynch Adams, veteran from UMass and previously Rutgers. So, I mean, Carter has been the starter, but Lynch Adams has quite frankly looked like the better option a lot of times. They've struggled with not only being consistently moving the ball on the ground, but the tackles for loss are have been really obvious. And for whatever reason, it seems like it's almost always Carter who's getting the ball, and he's got a guy in his face, and basically just securing the handoff is the priority before you get dropped for a loss. They think they found some things, some tendencies in the bye week to help clean that up. But yeah, they got to give them a chance. And again, the offensive line hasn't been good enough. The backs haven't been good enough. But yeah, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see Carter and K'Ron Lynch Adams. They've been getting almost equal carries. They really haven't gone any deeper than that in the backfield with carries in any meaningful snaps. The ones that have got it outside of that are, game's already over. So those are the two to look for.
And then offensive line sounds like there are some issues there. Kind of where do things stand with that position group?
Yeah, they came into the season really thin on experience depth. And right off the bat, you lose Kristen Phillips, took over as a starting right guard, and he suffers a season-ending injury in the opener. And so the number 2, Gavin Brocious, he steps in. He immediately suffers a season-ending injury. So they moved left tackle Brandon Baldwin to right guard, and redshirt freshman Stanton Ramil is taken over at left tackle. And that's basically what they've gone with. I mean, they play Ohio State, and Ramil's out, and they start true freshman Rakeem Johnson at left tackle against Ohio State. And I mean, I don't think we need to go into any depth to say that that's far from ideal when a guy who was playing high school football in Boise a year ago is starting at left tackle against Ohio State. So basically, the rotation is small, and they have a veteran center in Tanner Miller who came with Smith from Oregon State. Left guard Luke Newman, he's a Holy Cross transfer. So an FCS to FBS jump, and he was moved from left tackle to left guard. And then, like I said, you got Ramo at left tackle, and then Baldwin at right guard, and Ashton Lepo at right tackle. So that's basically what they're rolling with, and learning on the fly for the interior, the center left guard are experienced, but outside of that, it's kind of makeshift and learning on the fly.
What should Iowa fans expect to see in terms of obviously Iowa's been a team this year that's succeeded when they've run the ball well. Kind of what should they expect to see from this Spartan rush defense?
Well, it was one that was pretty good early. The new coordinator Joe Rossi, who is very familiar with Iowa because he came from Minnesota. I think he schemed it up well. They were playing really good team defense, a lot of rallying to the ball. And they'd done a pretty decent job in the run game. Then they just got trucked by Oregon last week or 2 weeks ago. So that's a concern, given especially Iowa's DNA. That everybody knows what Iowa wants to do. They're going to run the ball, and they got obviously an incredible back in Caleb Johnson, who's going to be a problem. So how Joe Rossi uses the bye week to scheme up, the defending Iowa, because this will be a different, they're coming off playing Ohio State, which had probably the best group of receivers in the nation, and playing Oregon with one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, to now Iowa. So it's a different obvious outlook scheme. But so yeah, I'll be curious to see how they line up against the Hawkeyes.
You were mentioning picking off Gabriel. Kind of what has the secondary been able to do, and do you envision some opportunities maybe against Cade McNamara?
Yeah, I think, for the most part, the Ohio State game, they wanted to keep everything in front of them. They wanted to make them earn it with long drives. They didn't want to give up the 70-yard touchdowns, and they didn't. But Ohio State also managed to put together those drives. So I think with the secondary that's dealt with some injuries, some long-term injuries. Charles Brantley, he's a veteran cornerback. He was kind of the forgotten guy because he's been dealing with injuries. He's been in the portal multiple times and pulled his name out, and he has just played really well. I think he's got 3 interceptions. He had 1 against Gabriel. He probably think he's listed at 170 pounds. I don't think he's anywhere close to that, would be the guess. But he throws himself around like there's a reason for the injuries when you're playing at that size and you're tackling like you're a middle linebacker. So he's been impressive. Nakai Martinez, a safety transfer from UCF. I think he's been solid for the most part. They haven't been going a little bit of rotation. A lot of it was due to, I think, injuries mostly. They rotate a lot in that front 7. So the defensive line, linebackers, you see a lot of different guys up there. But the secondary, partly due to injuries, they've kind of whittled that down to a shorter group. But they've been able to mostly not get burnt and keep stuff in front of them. I don't think Iowa's going to come out 5 wide and start trying to take the top off the defense. So I think you're going to see the safeties, more involved in the run game this week.
Coming off the bye week, kind of where do things stand from an injury standpoint? Any particular names to keep an eye on when the pregame availability report comes out 2 hours before?
It's a lot of, I talked about those season-ending injuries on the offensive line. See who would be questionable. Well, they also just lost starting tight end Michael Masunis for the year to shoulder surgery. Jordan Hall, linebacker, definitely in the rotation. He did not play again at Oregon. He dressed, didn't play, but he could be back this week. Let's see, at receiver, they've had long, like Alante Brown. He got injured in the opener, and who knows, it's unclear when he's going to come back. Antonio Gates Jr.'s missed some games, so he's a questionable one. But I think for the most part, they've kind of settled down on the injuries a little bit from just a rash of them in the first few weeks. So I don't know. Who knows? There could be a surprise name like there was a few weeks ago, or when they went to Boston College and they didn't have 4 of their top wide receivers were unavailable. So that wasn't ideal. But I think they'll be a little bit healthier now heading into this game than they were, 3-4 weeks ago.
Is there if Michigan State does X, they have a good chance of being competitive with this Iowa team?
Yeah, they've got to get them off the field. They can't just get mowed over. Get some stops if they can create a turnover. They've been, like I said, you pick Gabriel off twice, but really it's going to come down to what is this, a race to 20 points, right? Michigan State's defense has been ahead of its offense, but the offensive potential is there. It's just you see how close they can be, and then they just they can't get out of their own way. So if they can get Iowa off the field and not let them just put together 12-play drives, 80 yards and punching it in, and put together something offensively that doesn't end up in a turnover, then yeah, they have a chance. This is a winnable game for Michigan State. Iowa isn't. You're not going to Oregon. You're not hosting Ohio State. Iowa's a very good program. They have been for a long time, but this is Michigan State should have won last year at Iowa, despite being in the middle of a complete disaster with your coach fired. They land in Iowa and find out that Donor had pulled the plug on their NIL program. I mean, just a complete mess. And guys were already, a couple guys had left to plan to enter the portal, and they still should have won that game at Iowa, which is crazy. So, yeah, definitely a fighting chance on Saturday night in East Lansing.
It was interesting when I was looking back at that game because sometimes you kind of just look back at, okay, final score, 10-point game. But then you look at that and it was what, like a 16-10 Michigan State lead for most of the second half.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
yeah, punt return.
Yeah, Cooper to
yeah. I mean, don't kick the ball to Cooper, but that was part of it. And that's the thing. That was, you had a freshman punter learning on the fly. There was pressure on that, and he gets it off, and you could tell right when it came off his foot, this was trouble. And that cost him a win, probably, along with some other miscues, obviously, in the game. And then, they make a punting change the following week, and the guy they go with drops a snap, and that leads to a touchdown at Rutgers, which overcomes a 17-point deficit in the fourth quarter to win. And so special teams cost them a bowl game, for the second year in a row. So that is much improved this year. They have a reliable, they got Jonathan Kim last year, and you guys saw at Iowa, he booted a 58-yarder going into the halftime to set a Kinnick record. So they have a very reliable kicker. He hasn't missed yet this year. The punter, Ryan Eckley, he ended up being a freshman All-American last year. So they have solid kicking game. And, in a game where 20 points might win it, there you go. I mean, who knows? I mean, that can be the difference like we saw last year, that special teams are important.
Do you have a score prediction at this point in the week?
Oh, I haven't. I was actually just putting that together right now. I'm going to go... I reserve the right to change this for print, but I'm going to say something like, I don't know, 21 or 20-14 Iowa, something like that. I think it's going to be close. I'll give Iowa the edge right now just because Michigan State hasn't proved they can not turn the ball over offensively and put it together. And I think Iowa's going to present challenges for them in the run game. I don't know if they can overcome that. And basically, I don't know if they can score enough points to win this game against Iowa defense, So I would give Iowa the slight edge on the road.
Well, Matt, thanks for joining me.
No problem. And safe travels to East Lansing this weekend.
Thank you. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in to another episode. Until next time, we will talk Hawks later.